Max Thornton had seen a lot in his 15 years hauling cargo across 12-star systems. He'd sampled exotic delicacies that changed color while you ate them, had drinks that temporarily altered his perception of time, and once spent a very confusing weekend with a collective consciousness inhabiting 7 separate bodies. But nothing in his 35 years of existence had prepared him for the sound, that horrifying, slurping sound that had sent him bolting naked through the pristine corridors of the Silver Spire luxury apartments on Vidian Prime. Port Nexus was the jewel of the galactic community's diplomatic sector, a sprawling spaceport city where hundreds of species conducted trade, settled disputes, and most importantly to Max, spent money on entertainment. As a freelance cargo hauler with his own modest vessel, the Reasonable Doubt, Max had carved out a comfortable existence in the margins of galactic society. He worked enough contracts to maintain his ship and his freedom, and spent the rest comfortably sampling the diverse pleasures the galaxy had to offer. The city's artificial evening was in full swing as Max strolled in a Cosmic Junction, a high-end establishment popular with diplomats' aides, merchants, and the occasional adventurer. The place was packed tonight, the air thick with conversation in dozens of languages, laughter of varying tonal qualities, and the occasional harmonic hum of a Kurat greeting ritual. Holographic menus shimmered above each table, displaying drinks calibrated to each species' specific biochemistry. Thornton, the booming voice cut through the ambient noise. I thought you'd be halfway to the Sirius corridor by now. Max grinned and made his way to the bar where Hank Vasilov, an old friend from Earth who'd found his niche as Cosmic Junction's head mixologist, was pouring something phosphorescent into a decanter. Contract fell through, Max explained, sliding onto a stool. Bureaucratic nonsense. But their loss is my gain. Gives me a few days to enjoy civilization before the next job. Hank nodded sympathetically and slid a glass of amber liquid across the bar. Earth whiskey. The real stuff, not synthesized. On the house. You're a saint, Max said, taking a grateful sip. The familiar burn was a comforting reminder of home, even if Earth hadn't truly been home for over a decade. That's when he noticed her, the Nilarian woman seated 3 stools down. Her skin was a captivating shade of emerald that seemed to shimmer under the bar's ambient lighting. Her silver-white hair cascading down her back in elaborate braids interwoven with what appeared to be living bioluminescent strands. Unlike many xenobiologists who dressed in sterile uniforms, she wore an elegant dress that accentuated her slender form, curves in all the right places, despite the alien proportions. As if sensing his gaze, she turned. Her eyes were entirely black, except for iridescent purple irises that caught the light like oil on water. Their eyes locked, and Max felt a jolt that had nothing to do with Hank's whiskey. Buy you a drink? He offered, sliding into the empty seat beside her before he could think better of it. She smiled, a very human gesture that nonetheless highlighted her alien beauty. I was wondering when you'd notice me noticing you. Her voice had a melodic quality, with perfect standard English pronunciation that bore just the faintest trace of an accent he couldn't place. Max Thornton, he introduced himself, extending a hand. Cargo hauler, occasional troublemaker. Nyla Narendath, she replied, taking his hand in her cooler one. Xenobiologist, occasional troublemaker myself. Something about her touch lingered. Not physically, but a sensation that traveled up his arm and settled somewhere behind his sternum. Xenobiology? Studying what makes all us strange folks tick. Nyla's laugh was like chimes in a gentle breeze. Something like that. Currently, I'm conducting practical field research on cross-species biological compatibility. Sounds fascinating, Max said, genuinely interested despite himself. Lab work? Sometimes, she admitted, taking a sip of her drink. Something clear with swirling patterns of bioluminescence that matched her hair ornaments. But theory only gets you so far. The most valuable data comes from direct observation and participation. The way she emphasized the last words left little doubt about her meaning. Max felt his pulse quicken. And what brings a cargo hauler to Port Nexus? She asked, those hypnotic eyes studying him with scientific curiosity and something more primal. Just dropped off medical supplies from the Terran colonies. I'm between contracts for a few days. Max signaled to Hank for another round, though I suddenly find myself very interested in xenobiology. Hours passed in conversation that flowed as smoothly as the drinks. Nyla was brilliant, funny, and astonishingly direct about her interests, both scientific and personal. She explained her research into the physiology of pleasure across species, the cultural taboos that inhibited shared understanding, and her mission to document the full spectrum of biological responses. Most species, she explained, leaning close enough that he could smell her exotic perfume, like cinnamon and ozone, evolve reproductive systems in isolation. When we joined the galactic community, we discovered that while true reproduction between species is rare, pleasure compatibility is remarkably common. It's as if the universe wants us to connect. By the time Cosmic Junction's artificial lighting dimmed to signal the late hour, Max and Nyla were lost in their own world. The transition from the bar to her luxury apartment in the Silver Spire happened with the inevitability of gravity. Her apartment was a stunning blend of alien aesthetics and practical human accommodations, clearly designed for entertaining guests of various species. Living plants grew along the walls, responding to their presence with subtle movements and color changes. The panoramic windows offered a breathtaking view of Port Nexus, with ships of all sizes arriving and departing against the backdrop of Vidian Prime's 3 moons. But Max barely had time to appreciate the view before Nyla was leading him to her bedroom, their conversation giving way to more direct forms of communication. What followed was a blur of sensation, her skin against his, cooler but warming with every touch, the strange but intoxicating taste of her lips, the unexpected flexibility of her limbs. Everything was going spectacularly until the moment. They were completely intertwined, lost in the rhythm of their encounter, when Nyla's body responded in a way Max's human experience had not prepared him for. From somewhere in her anatomy came the distinct, unmistakable sound of someone enthusiastically slurping spaghetti, wet, loud, and startlingly powerful. Max froze. The sound came again, louder this time, accompanied by a rippling sensation that was not entirely unpleasant, but utterly alien. "What?" he began, but was cut off by another slurp, so loud it seemed to echo off the bedroom walls. Nyla smiled serenely, clearly enjoying herself. "Don't worry," she purred. "That's completely normal for my species during arousal. It's a compliment, really." But Max's rational brain had already short-circuited. Some primal part of his consciousness, the part that hadn't fully adjusted to sharing the galaxy with non-human intelligences, took control. Before he could process what was happening, he had leapt from the bed, grabbed his clothes, and was sprinting naked toward the door. "Max!" Nyla called after him, confusion evident in her voice. "What's wrong? Where are you going?" But Max was already gone, racing down the corridor with his clothes clutched to his chest, the sound of Nylarian arousal echoing in his ears like some cosmic horror. He didn't stop running until he reached the public transport terminal 3 levels down, earning bewildered stares from a group of Hathi diplomats as he frantically pulled on his pants. On the transport pod back to the docking bays where his ship was berthed, Max finally caught his breath. Shame washed over him in waves. He, who prided himself on his galactic sophistication and open-mindedness, had just fled from a perfectly pleasant encounter because of an unexpected sound. He slumped in his seat, wondering how he could possibly make amends, or if he even should. An hour later, Max sat in the cramped common area of his ship, nursing a synthetic coffee and his wounded pride, when his comm unit chimed. Expecting a message from Nyla, perhaps a well-deserved reprimand, he was surprised to see Hank's ID. "Terminal 7, Dock 14, Hank's message read. "I get off in 20 minutes. You look like you need a drink and a sympathetic ear." It was nearly midnight by station time when Max trudged into the small tavern near the docking bays, a far cry from the upscale Cosmic Junction. The clientele here was mostly human spacers, mechanics, and the occasional down-on-their-luck traveler. Hank was already waiting at a corner table, 2 glasses of something amber before him. "You look like hell," he observed as Max slumped into the chair opposite him. Feel worse, Max muttered, taking a long drink. It burned going down. Cheap synthetic whiskey, nothing like what Hank served at his regular job. So, Hank leaned forward, amusement dancing in his eyes. Word travels fast in certain circles. I hear you made quite an impression on a certain Nilarian xenobiologist. Max groaned and put his head in his hands. How bad is it? She's not angry, if that's what you're worried about, Hank chuckled. More. Scientifically curious about your reaction. Apparently, you're the first human to respond that way. The sound, Hank? Max looked up, haunted. It was like someone slurping spaghetti through a straw, but amplified. How was I supposed to react to that? Hank burst into laughter so loud that several nearby patrons turned to stare. You didn't know? It's common knowledge about Nilarians. Their reproductive physiology includes specialized vacuum chambers that... Stop. Max held up a hand. I don't need the technical details. For someone who's been around the galaxy as much as you have, Hank wiped tears of mirth from his eyes. You can be surprisingly provincial. It's just biology, Max. Easy for you to say. Max grumbled. You've been living on Vidian Prime for what, 8 years now? You've had time to adjust to everything. Hank's expression softened. Look, if it helps, Nilarians consider that sound a sign of extreme pleasure and compatibility. In their culture, it's deeply intimate, not something they share with just anyone. You should be flattered. Max considered this, feeling a fresh wave of shame. I really messed up, didn't I? Spectacularly, Hank agreed cheerfully, but not irreparably. Nyla's family has diplomatic status. They're hosting some kind of reception tomorrow evening at the embassy quarter. Public event. You could show up, apologize in person. Her family has diplomatic status? Max felt a new knot form in his stomach. How important are we talking? Her father is Ambassador Pin Naren, Hank said casually, as if this weren't monumental information. Max nearly choked on his drink. The Nilarian High Ambassador to the galactic community? That Pin Naren. The very same, Hank confirmed. Which makes your naked corridor sprint even more amusing from a certain perspective. Max groaned and finished his drink in one swallow. I'm doomed. Nah, Hank clapped him on the shoulder. Just temporarily embarrassed. So, embassy reception tomorrow? I can get you on the guest list. I don't know, Hank. Max hesitated. Consider it from her perspective, Hank pressed. She's a scientist. Your reaction is data. Incomplete data. Don't you think she deserves a complete data set? Max couldn't help but smile despite himself. When you put it that way, attending would practically be a contribution to science. The Nilarian embassy occupied an entire floating platform in Port Nexus's diplomatic sector, connected to the main station by elegant transport bridges. As Max approached in his one and only formal outfit, a midnight blue suit that had cost him 3 months' worth of cargo runs, he fought the urge to turn back. The embassy's organic architecture, typical of Nilarian design, featured flowing lines and bioluminescent accents that made the entire structure appear to be breathing gently. The reception was already in full swing when Max entered the main hall, having been waved through security thanks to Hank's influence. Diplomats, business leaders, and cultural attaches from dozens of species mingled under the soft glow of living light fixtures. Servers glided through the crowd with trays of food and drink calibrated for various biologies. Max accepted a glass of something sparkling from a passing server and tried to look like he belonged. He'd just begun to wonder how he would ever find Nyla in this crowd when a familiar voice spoke behind him. I didn't expect to see you here, Captain Thornton. He turned to find Nyla watching him with those mesmerizing purple-black eyes. She wore a formal ensemble that combined elements of traditional Nilarian dress with contemporary fashion, flowing fabrics in deep emerald and silver that complemented her skin and hair. Several bioluminescent ornaments pulsed gently in her elaborate upswept hairstyle. I came to apologize, Max said directly, figuring there was no point in small talk. My behavior last night was inexcusable. I reacted poorly to something I wasn't prepared for, and I embarrassed both of us. Nyla studied him for a moment. Then her serious expression melted into a smile. Apology accepted. From a research perspective, your reaction was quite informative, if unexpected. Relief flooded through Max. I'm glad you can see it that way. I'm usually much more adaptable. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private, Nyla suggested, glancing around at the crowded reception. There's a garden terrace that should be quieter. Max followed her through the throng of guests and out onto a breathtaking terrace. Living plants from Nyla formed intricate patterns, some extending tendrils toward them as they passed, then gently retreating. The air was perfumed with exotic scents, and the view of Port Nexus at night was spectacular. They found a secluded bench partially enclosed by luminescent flora that provided a sense of privacy while still allowing them to see the party inside. I should explain, Nyla began once they were seated. What you experienced is a perfectly normal Nylarian physiological response. The vacuum effect has evolutionary origins related to our reproductive biology, though now it serves primarily as an expression of pleasure. Max felt his face grow warm. I've traveled extensively, met dozens of species, but I've never encountered that particular feature. We Nylarians are private about our intimate biology outside of academic contexts, she explained, which is why I find xenobiology so important, breaking down these barriers of misunderstanding. There was something in her tone that made Max look more closely at her. Behind the scientific detachment, he sensed a deeper passion for her work. Is that why you became a xenobiologist? To foster understanding. Nyla's expression softened. Partly, but also because I've always been fascinated by how different species can be so unique yet share so many commonalities. She paused, then added more quietly, and because it gives me a measure of independence that Nylarian diplomatic families don't typically allow their daughters. Independence? Max asked, intrigued. Nyla sighed, gazing back toward the reception. My father has arranged a political marriage for me with Counselor Trev's family. It's a traditional alliance between diplomatic houses designed to strengthen certain political factions. Her voice took on a bitter edge. My research gives me a reason to delay, to travel, to have some control over my own life before duty claims it entirely. That sounds archaic. Max ventured, surprised. It is, Nyla agreed. But tradition holds powerful sway in Nylarian politics. The irony is that we present ourselves to the galaxy as forward-thinking, scientifically advanced, while our internal social structures remain rigidly hierarchical. Before Max could respond, a tall Nylarian male approached their secluded spot. His skin was a darker green than Nyla's, and his silver hair was cropped short in what Max recognized as a military style. He wore formal diplomatic attire with insignia that marked him as security personnel. Nyla, he said stiffly, barely acknowledging Max's presence. Your father requests your presence. The Trev delegation has arrived. A flash of annoyance crossed Nyla's face, quickly masked. Thank you, Varen. Please inform my father I'll join him momentarily. The security officer hesitated, glancing at Max with undisguised suspicion before nodding curtly and returning to the reception. I should go, Nyla said, standing reluctantly. Political obligations. Max rose as well. Of course. I don't want to cause any trouble. You're not, she assured him, then added with a mischievous smile. But perhaps you could cause a little trouble later. I still have considerable research to conduct on human-Nylarian compatibility, and our previous study was interrupted. Max felt a flutter of both excitement and trepidation. I think I'd like to contribute to science, he said carefully, though perhaps with a better understanding of what to expect this time. Excellent. Nyla pressed a small communication device into his palm. Contact me when you leave. I'll have a research proposal ready for your review. As she walked away, Max couldn't help but admire her confidence and the subtle defiance in her posture as she rejoined the diplomatic reception. He was about to follow at a discreet distance when a hand clamped firmly on his shoulder. Human, a cold voice said quietly in his ear. A word. Max turned to find himself facing a Nylarian male of imposing height, dressed in ornate formal, where that practically screamed political power. His green features were sharply angular, and his eyes held none of the warmth that Nyla's did. I am Jarn Trev, the Nilarian stated without preamble. Son of Counselor Trev, betrothed to Nyla Naren. Max maintained his composure despite the sinking feeling in his stomach. Max Thornton, pleasure to meet you. I doubt that, Trev said icily. Let me be direct, human. Nyla's scientific curiosity is tolerated within certain boundaries. Those boundaries do not extend to forming attachments with transient cargo haulers. I think that's for Nyla to decide, Max replied, keeping his voice level despite the anger bubbling beneath the surface. Trev's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. You misunderstand. This isn't a negotiation. Nyla has obligations that supersede her personal desires. Our union has been arranged to strengthen crucial political alliances. I won't allow her temporary fascination with alien physiology to interfere with matters of state. Sounds like a healthy basis for marriage, Max observed drily. Your human notions of romantic love are irrelevant, Trev said dismissively. Our union is about duty, lineage, and power. Concepts I suspect are beyond your comprehension. He straightened his already impeccable attire. Consider this a courtesy warning. Return to your ship, leave Port Nexus, find another xenobiologist to satisfy your curiosity. Nyla is beyond your reach. Before Max could form a suitably scathing reply, Trev turned and strode back to the reception, leaving Max alone on the terrace with his thoughts and a decision to make. He opted to leave the reception rather than create a scene that might embarrass Nyla. Back in the slightly dingy comfort of his ship, Max poured himself a drink and contemplated his next move. The rational choice was clear. Forget Nyla. Find another contract. Leave Port Nexus and its political complications behind. He had no business getting involved with the daughter of a high ambassador, especially one already promised to a politically powerful family. But then, Max had rarely been known for making the rational choice. His comm unit chimed. Hank, requesting a video call. Max accepted, and his friend's face appeared on the small screen. So, Hank began without preamble. I hear you met the charming Jarn Trev. Max frowned. News travels fast. In diplomatic circles? At light speed. Hank looked concerned. Listen, Max, I thought you were just going to apologize to Nyla. Maybe have a bit of fun. I didn't realize you'd get caught in high Nilarian politics. Neither did I, Max sighed. But there's something about her, Hank. Not just the obvious attraction. She's trapped in this archaic system, using her research as the only freedom she has. And you're thinking of playing the White Knight? Hank shook his head. The Trev family isn't to be trifled with. They control significant portions of Nilarian military contracts, have connections throughout the galactic community bureaucracy. They can make your life very difficult. I'm not planning to elope with her, Max protested. I don't know. See where things go. Just be careful, Hank warned. This isn't like your usual entanglements. There's real power at play here. After ending the call, Max stared at the communication device Nyla had given him. Common sense said to toss it out the airlock. Instead, he activated it. I'm free for further scientific inquiry, he sent, whenever your diplomatic duties allow. The response came almost immediately. My quarters. 2 hours. Bring an open mind and your scientific curiosity. 2 weeks later, Max sat in a dingy repair shop in the industrial sector of Port Nexus, watching a Terry John mechanic with 6 arms simultaneously work on different components of his ship's navigation system. How much longer? He asked, trying not to sound as anxious as he felt. The mechanic's primary eyes swiveled toward him while the secondary pair remained focused on the work. Rush jobs cost extra, human. You paid for standard service. Max bit back his frustration. He'd been planet-side longer than planned, extending his stay through a series of increasingly flimsy excuses. The truth that he couldn't tear himself away from Nyla wasn't something he was ready to admit, even to himself. Their research sessions had evolved from purely physical exploration to something deeper. Late-night conversations about their vastly different upbringings, shared meals featuring cuisines from across the galaxy, quiet moments watching the stars from her apartment's panoramic windows. Max had learned to appreciate, even enjoy, the unique aspects of Nylarian physiology that had initially sent him running. Nyla had confided more about the suffocating weight of family expectations and her dreams of a life determined by her own choices. His comm unit chirped with Nyla's distinctive tone, a sound that now sent a pleasant warmth through him rather than panic. Max. Her voice was tight, with an emotion he couldn't immediately identify. Are you alone? Can you talk? Yes to both, he replied, moving away from the mechanic for privacy. What's wrong? There was a long pause, then, I need to see you. Not my quarters. It might be monitored now. The Harmony Medical Center in the human quarter. Use the service entrance. Come alone, and make sure you're not followed. Nyla, you're scaring me, Max said, concern mounting. Are you hurt? In trouble? Both, potentially, she replied, cryptically. Just come. Please. The call ended, leaving Max staring at his comm unit in bewilderment. He turned to the mechanic. I need my ship operational. Now, whatever it costs. The Terry John looked up in irritation. I told you. Max tossed a credit chip onto the workbench, significantly more than the repair was worth. Now, 3 hours later, with the ship hurriedly patched and docked in a different bay under a temporary registration, Max made his way to the human quarter. This section of Port Nexus lacked the gleaming architecture of the diplomatic sector or the efficient utility of the commercial zones. Here, Earth colonists and other humanoid species had created a neighborhood that resembled old Earth cities, slightly chaotic, varied in architectural styles, with actual weather simulation rather than the perfectly controlled climate of the upper levels. The Harmony Medical Center was a nondescript building tucked between a noodle shop and a store selling Earth imports. Despite the modest exterior, Max knew it had a reputation for excellence, particularly in cross-species medicine. He found a service entrance in a back alley and pressed the call button. A human woman in medical scrubs opened the door, eyeing him warily. Identification: Max Thornton. Nyla Narendath asked me to come. The woman's expression softened slightly. Follow me. Quickly. She led him through storage areas and staff corridors until they reached a small private room in a secluded wing. The door slid open to reveal Nyla, sitting on the edge of an examination bed, looking more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. Her normally vibrant green skin seemed paler, and her elegant posture was replaced by a slight hunch. Max, she said, relief evident in her voice. You came. Of course I came, he replied, moving to her side. What's happening? Are you sick? The human doctor who had led him and cleared her throat. I'll give you 2 a moment. Call if you need me. She exited, the door sliding shut behind her. Nyla took Max's hands in hers, her cool fingers trembling slightly. There's no easy way to say this, so I'll be direct. I'm pregnant. With your child. Max staggered back half a step before catching himself. But how? We're different species. Completely different evolutionary paths. That's supposed to be impossible. It should be, Nyla agreed. But Dr. Clark, the woman who brought you in, has confirmed it. Somehow, the combination of Nylarian and human genetic material has created a viable embryo. It's unprecedented in xenobiology. How long have you known? Just since this morning, Nyla said. I've been feeling unwell for several days, symptoms that would be consistent with pregnancy in Nylarians, but I dismissed it as impossible. Then I started noticing accelerated cellular changes. The pregnancy is progressing at approximately 3 times the normal Nylarian rate. Max sank into the chair beside the bed, mind racing. 3 times? How long until? Dr. Clark estimates 3 months, perhaps less, Nyla said, watching his reaction carefully. Max, I need you to understand something. I didn't plan this. It shouldn't even be possible. But now that it's happening. She placed a protective hand over her abdomen. I want this child. It's not just a scientific miracle, though it certainly is that. It's ours. Max ran a hand through his hair, trying to process the implications. Your family, Trev, will be furious, Nyla finished grimly. A political marriage can withstand many things, but not this. Not a child with another man, especially a human. This pregnancy effectively ends the alliance my father has spent years cultivating. Will they try to? Max couldn't finish the question. Nyla's expression hardened. Force me to terminate? They might consider it, which is why I came here, to a human doctor outside Nylarian jurisdiction. Dr. Clark is part of the Harmony Coalition. They advocate for cross-species rights and understanding. She's agreed to help protect me. Max stood and began pacing the small room. This is a lot to process. I never expected to be a father. Certainly not like this. I understand if you want no part of this, Nyla said quietly. You can walk away. I won't blame you. Max stopped pacing and looked at her, really looked at her. Despite her alien features, he could read the emotions playing across her face. Fear, uncertainty, hope, and something else that made his chest tighten. I'm not walking away, he said firmly, surprising himself with how much he meant it. I don't know what kind of father I'll be, or how we'll manage this, but I'm not leaving you to face this alone. The relief in Nyla's eyes was palpable. Thank you, she whispered. The door slid open and Dr. Clark entered, her expression serious. I hate to interrupt, but we need to move quickly. I've received word that Nylarian security personnel are conducting searches in the human quarter. They may know you're here, Nyla. Ow, Max demanded. We were careful. There are eyes everywhere in Port Nexus, Dr. Clark said grimly. And Ambassador Naren has considerable resources. We need to move you to a more secure location until we can develop a long-term plan. I have a ship, Max offered. Recently repaired, registered under a temporary ID. We could leave Port Nexus entirely. Dr. Clark shook her head. Too risky. Departure clearance would be denied, and they'd board you before you cleared the station's gravity well. No, we need to hide you here in plain sight until diplomatic channels can be engaged. She turned to Nyla. The Coalition has members in the Galactic Diplomatic Corps. They might be able to help, but it will take time. Time we may not have, Nyla said, a hand still protectively covering her abdomen. The pregnancy is progressing rapidly, and once my father confirms my condition. Dr. Clark's comm unit chimed urgently. She checked it, her expression darkening. Security alert at the main entrance. We have minutes at most. She moved to a wall panel and pressed a sequence of buttons. A hidden door slid open, revealing a narrow corridor. Emergency evacuation route. It will take you to a safe house 3 blocks from here. Coalition members will meet you there. Nyla rose from the bed, determination replacing fear on her features. Dr. Clark, I can't thank you enough. Thank me by staying safe, the doctor replied. Both of you. She handed Max a small device. Communications blackout protocol. Use this only in emergency. It's untraceable but limited range. Now go. Max took Nyla's hand, and together they slipped into the hidden passage. Behind them, Dr. Clark sealed the entrance just as the sound of voices echoed from the corridor outside. The safe house turned out to be a small apartment above an Earth cuisine restaurant, accessed through a service elevator that required a biometric scan provided by Dr. Clark's device. Inside, they found 2 waiting figures, a burly human man and a Zorvic female whose mottled exoskeleton marked her as middle-aged. Welcome, the Zorvic said, her translator rendering her clicking speech into standard English. I am Trees, and this is Ramon. We are coalition handlers. You'll be safe here temporarily. How temporarily? Max asked, helping Nyla to a chair. The hurried journey through back alleys had clearly taxed her. Difficult to say, Ramon answered in a deep baritone. Communications are being monitored throughout the station. Nylarian security forces have established checkpoints in all major sectors. They're looking for me, Nyla said, exhaustion evident in her voice. My father must know about the pregnancy. Trees clicked her mandibles in what Max recognized as a Zorvic expression of confirmation. Ambassador Naren issued a statement 1 hour ago about his daughter's medical emergency and the need to return her to appropriate care facilities. The Trev family has added that certain disreputable elements may be holding you against your will. That's absurd, Max protested. Nyla came to Dr. Clark voluntarily. Facts matter little in matters of politics, Trees observed philosophically. Our priority is keeping both of you and the child safe while diplomatic channels are pursued. What diplomatic channels? Nyla asked. My father controls Nylarian diplomatic policy in this sector. Ramon exchanged glances with Trees. The Galactic Charter includes provisions for asylum in cases of forced medical procedures. If we can get your case before the Diplomatic Corps Tribunal, there's precedent for protection. That could take weeks, Max pointed out. And Nyla's pregnancy is accelerated. We don't have weeks. Indeed, Trees agreed, which is why alternative measures may be necessary. The following days passed in tense monotony. Max and Nyla remained confined to the safe house, while coalition members brought supplies and news from outside. The search for Nyla had intensified, with Nylarian security now conducting door-to-door operations in the human quarter. Meanwhile, her pregnancy continued its accelerated progression. By the end of the first week, she looked as if she were entering her second trimester. Dr. Clark visited when she could, bringing portable medical equipment to monitor the developing fetus. Remarkable, she murmured during one examination. The genetic integration is perfect, neither fully human nor fully Nylarian, but a true hybrid. The accelerated development appears stable, with no signs of complications. Except the fact that we're hiding in an attic while half of Port Nexus hunts for us, Max commented dryly. Dr. Clark's expression turned serious. There's been a development. Ambassador Naren has requested a private meeting with coalition representatives. He's agreed to neutral ground and limited security. Nyla looked up sharply. My father never negotiates from a position of weakness. He must have an angle. Undoubtedly, Dr. Clark agreed. But it's an opportunity we can't ignore. The meeting is set for tomorrow. Max exchanged a worried look with Nyla. I don't like it. Could be a trap. Or it could be our only chance, Nyla countered, wincing slightly as she shifted position. The accelerated pregnancy was taking a toll on her body. My father is many things, but he's always been practical. If he's requesting a meeting, it means he sees some benefit in negotiation. We should prepare for all possibilities, Ramon suggested. I'll coordinate with other coalition members, ensure we have extraction options if the meeting goes poorly. The next morning, Trees returned with formal clothing for both Max and Nyla. Appearances matter in diplomacy, she explained. Even clandestine diplomacy. Max felt ridiculous in the fitted suit, but had to admit that Nyla looked stunning despite her advanced pregnancy. The formal Nylarian maternity dress somehow managed to make her condition appear regal rather than cumbersome. The meeting location has been secured. Trees informed them as they prepare to leave. A private dining room at the Interstellar Commerce Guild, neutral territory with its own security protocols. Ambassador Naren has agreed to bring only 2 aides. And the Trev family? Nyla asked, adjusting her hair ornaments. Tree's mandibles clicked in what Max had learned was an expression of concern. No official representation. But our sources indicate significant movement of Trev security personnel throughout the commercial district. Wonderful, Max muttered. So they'll just be waiting outside instead of at the table. The journey to the Commerce Guild building required careful navigation through service corridors and maintenance tunnels. Max kept a protective arm around Nyla, acutely aware of her vulnerability. By the time they reached the guild's private entrance, sweat beaded on her forehead from the exertion. Are you sure you're up for this? Max asked quietly as they waited for security clearance. Nyla straightened her shoulders with visible effort. I've never been more certain of anything. Ambassador Pin Naren cut an imposing figure at the head of the private dining table. His emerald skin was deeper in tone than Nyla's, creased with age and authority. Silver-white hair was pulled back in elaborate braids, denoting his diplomatic rank. Flanking him were 2 younger Nylarian males in formal attire, security rather than diplomatic staff, judging by their watchful posture. As Max and Nyla entered with their coalition escorts, the ambassador's expression remained unreadable. Only a slight widening of his eyes at the sight of his daughter's unmistakable pregnancy betrayed any emotion. Daughter, he said finally, his voice deep and measured. You are well as circumstances allow. Father, Nyla replied with equal formality. The ambassador gestured to the empty chairs. Please sit. This conversation is overdue. Once everyone was seated, an uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Max fought the urge to fidget under the ambassador's calculating gaze. I will speak plainly, Ambassador Naren said at last. The situation is unsustainable. Your disappearance has created a diplomatic incident that threatens relations between Nyler and multiple galactic community partners. Counselor Trev is displeased. I'm sure he is, Nyla responded, her voice cool. His plans for a political marriage have been thoroughly disrupted. Plans that you were well aware of, her father pointed out. Plans that you agreed to, in principle, before your scientific curiosity led you astray. Max tensed, but kept silent, recognizing that this initial exchange was between father and daughter. I agreed under duress, Nyla countered. And before I understood, there were other possibilities. She placed a hand on her rounded abdomen. This child changes everything, father. Not just for me personally, but potentially for interspecies relations throughout the community. The ambassador's gaze shifted to Max. And you, Captain Thornton, do you fully comprehend what you've involved yourself in? The political ramifications? The biological unknowns? The cultural complications? Max met the ambassador's eyes steadily. With respect, Ambassador, I understand enough. I understand that Nyla deserves the freedom to choose her own path. I understand that our child, however unexpected, deserves a chance at life, free from political manipulation. And I understand that sometimes the most important diplomatic breakthroughs come from unexpected places. Something like grudging respect flickered across the ambassador's features before his formal mask returned. Eloquently put. However, sentiment does not change certain realities. He leaned forward. The Trev family will not simply accept this situation. They view it as a personal insult and a political liability. They have resources and influence that extend beyond my ability to control. What are you saying, Father? Nyla asked, tension evident in her voice. I am saying, the ambassador replied carefully, that while I may have come to reassess certain aspects of the situation, others have not. Counselor Trev demands the fulfillment of our agreement. His son Jarn has taken the matter as a point of personal honor. So you arranged this meeting to tell us we're doomed? Max couldn't keep the edge from his voice. No, Captain Thornton. I arranged this meeting because, despite appearances, I do care for my daughter's well-being. The ambassador's formal demeanor cracked slightly, revealing something like genuine concern. And because there may be a diplomatic solution, albeit a complex one. Nyla leaned forward, hope kindling in her eyes. What kind of solution? Before the ambassador could answer, his communication device chirped urgently. He checked it, his expression darkening. It appears our time is shorter than anticipated. Trev security forces have surrounded this building, bypassing guild protocols through some form of administrative override. Ramon stood immediately. We need to move. Now, the extraction team is on standby. There is no time, Ambassador Naren said sharply. They have control of all exits. He turned to Nyla, decision crystallizing in his eyes. Daughter, I cannot openly defy the Trev family without creating a diplomatic crisis that would weaken Nyler's position for generations. But neither can I allow them to harm you, or... He hesitated, then gestured to her abdomen. My grandchild. What are you suggesting? Max asked, already positioning himself protectively beside Nyla. A diplomatic escort, the ambassador replied, standing. My personal shuttle is docked at the guild's private bay. As High Ambassador, I can invoke diplomatic immunity for anyone under my direct protection. It won't stop them permanently, but it will give you time to reach safety. Nyla stared at her father in disbelief. You would help us escape? A hint of a smile touched the ambassador's stern features. Let's say I am negotiating an alternative diplomatic arrangement, one that may ultimately prove more valuable than an alliance with the Trevs. The sudden blare of security alarms cut through the moment of understanding. One of the ambassador's aides rushed to the door, checking the corridor outside. Security breach in the main lobby, Ambassador. Trev forces heavily armed. Then we must move quickly, the ambassador decided. He pressed a sequence on his communication device. Prepare my shuttle for immediate departure. Priority clearance. Max helped Nyla to her feet, supporting her weight as she struggled with the cumbersome pregnancy. Ramon and Trees conferred quickly with the coalition members on their own devices, coordinating some kind of response. This way, Ambassador Naren instructed, leading them toward a concealed door at the back of the private dining room. The executive lift connects directly to the docking bay. They moved as quickly as Nyla's condition allowed, the sounds of commotion growing louder behind them. The ambassador's aides took up defensive positions, weapons appearing from beneath their formal attire. "Father," Nyla said breathlessly as they entered the lift, "thank you." The ambassador's expression softened momentarily. "You have always been stubborn, daughter. Perhaps I should have recognized earlier that you would forge your own path." He turned to Max. "Captain Thornton, I entrust her safety and that of my grandchild to you. Do not disappoint me." "I won't," Max promised, meaning it more than he'd meant anything in his life. The lift doors began to close, but before they fully shut, the unmistakable figure of Jarn Trev appeared in the corridor, flanked by armed security. His face contorted with rage as he spotted them. "Stop them," he shouted, drawing a weapon. "The Nilarian woman is being abducted." The lift doors sealed shut as the first energy blast hit them, leaving a scorch mark on the polished metal. The ambassador's communication device chirped again. "Yes," he answered calmly. "Proceed with emergency departure protocols. Override all station traffic control." The lift descended rapidly, inertial dampeners struggling to keep up with the accelerated pace. Nyla grimaced, one hand on her swollen abdomen. "Are you all right?" Max asked urgently. "Just pressure," she assured him, though her voice was strained. "The baby is active." The lift slowed abruptly as they reached the docking level. Ambassador Naren positioned himself at the doors, motioning for the others to stay back. "Be prepared for resistance," he warned. The doors slid open to reveal an empty docking bay with a sleek Nilarian diplomatic shuttle waiting, engines already humming with pre-launch sequences. They rushed toward it, Nyla moving as quickly as her condition allowed. They were halfway across the bay when the emergency doors at the far end burst open. Jarn Trev led a contingent of security personnel, all armed and advancing rapidly. "Ambassador Naren," Trev called out, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "This is a violation of our agreement. The woman is promised to my family." "Circumstances have changed, Counselor's son," the ambassador replied without slowing his pace. "Diplomatic necessities require a reassessment of our arrangement." "This is no diplomatic necessity," Trev snarled, raising his weapon. "This is abduction and genetic contamination." The ambassador's shuttle lowered its boarding ramp as they approached. "Get aboard," he instructed Max and Nyla. "My pilot has instructions to depart immediately for the Harmony Coalition outpost in the Rigel system. You'll be beyond Nilarian jurisdiction there." "You're not coming?" Nyla asked, clearly shocked. "I cannot," her father explained quickly. "My direct involvement would create a full diplomatic crisis, but I can ensure your safe departure." He pressed a small device into her hand. "When you reach safety, use this to contact me through secure channels." Max helped Nyla up the ramp, acutely aware of the armed forces advancing across the bay. "Ambassador," he began, unsure how to express his gratitude. "Go," the older Nilarian commanded. "Protect my daughter and grandchild. We will speak again when it is safe." As they reached the top of the ramp, a sudden cry of pain from Nyla stopped them both. She doubled over, clutching her abdomen. "What's wrong?" Max asked, panic rising in his chest. "The baby," she gasped. "Something's happening. I think it's coming." "Now." Max looked helplessly between Nyla and the approaching security forces. "It can't be now." "Accelerated pregnancy," she reminded him through gritted teeth. "Very accelerated." Ambassador Naren had followed them up the ramp and heard Nyla's distress. His diplomatic composure faltered completely. "She cannot travel in this condition," he declared, The medical facilities on this shuttle are minimal. We have no choice, Max argued, supporting Nyla as another contraction visibly passed through her. Trev will be here in seconds. The ambassador made a rapid decision. Change of plans, he announced, activating his communication device. Diplomatic emergency. I need Dr. Larenzel to meet my shuttle at Emergency Medical Bay 14. Top priority. And inform Nylarian Security Command that I am invoking Protocol 17. Max had no idea what Protocol 17 was, but the effect was immediate. Alarms blared throughout the docking bay, and security barriers began dropping into place between them and Trev's approaching forces. Those will not hold them long, the ambassador cautioned, helping Max guide Nyla into the shuttle. But they will buy us time to reach the medical facility. The shuttle's interior was luxuriously appointed, but compact. They settled Nyla onto a cushioned bench as the pilot received the ambassador's new instructions. Moments later, the craft was lifting off, maneuvering rapidly through the docking bay doors just as Trev's forces began breaching the security barriers. Where are we going? Max asked as he held Nyla's hand through another contraction. Emergency Medical Bay, the ambassador explained, his formal demeanor replaced with genuine concern. It's a secure facility within the diplomatic sector. Dr. Zell is the foremost xenobiologist on Port Nexus. If anyone can safely deliver a human-Ilarian hybrid, it's him. The shuttle accelerated smoothly through Port Nexus's restricted diplomatic flight corridors, bypassing normal traffic control with the ambassador's priority clearance. Behind them, Max could see pursuit craft scrambling, but they were minutes behind at least. Nyla's breathing had become labored, her contractions increasing in frequency. This is happening. Very fast, she managed between waves of pain. Nylarian labor is typically shorter than human. The ambassador informed Max, surprising him with this personal knowledge. And given the accelerated development of the pregnancy, we'd better hurry, Max finished for him. The shuttle banked sharply and descended toward a nondescript building nestled among the gleaming towers of the diplomatic sector. A landing pad extended from an upper level, illuminated with emergency beacons. We've arrived, the ambassador announced as the shuttle settled onto the pad. The boarding ramp lowered to reveal a medical team already waiting with a hover stretcher. Max recognized Dr. Clark among them, alongside a tall, willowy Nylarian male who must be Dr. Zell. The coalition had clearly been coordinating with the ambassador more extensively than they'd revealed. The transfer from shuttle to medical facility was a blur of activity. Nyla was placed on the stretcher, medical scanners immediately beginning their assessment. Max stayed at her side, holding her hand as they rushed through sterile corridors to a preparation room. The contractions are 3 minutes apart, Dr. Zell announced, reviewing the scanner data. The child is positioned correctly, but its hybrid nature presents unique challenges. Ambassador, I must ask, how did you arrange this? Questions later, Dr. Ambassador Naren replied tersely. Save my daughter and grandchild first. Dr. Clark approached Max. We've prepared as much as possible, but this is unprecedented territory. The combination of human and Ilarian physiologies creates variables we can't fully predict. Will they be okay? Max asked, the fear in his voice unfamiliar to his own ears. Before Dr. Clark could answer, alarms sounded throughout the facility. A security officer burst into the preparation room. Ambassador, Trev forces have breached the outer perimeter. They're claiming diplomatic sanctuary violation and demanding access. Stall them, the ambassador commanded. This is a medical emergency under my direct authority. They're not accepting that explanation, sir, the officer reported grimly. They have override codes. Someone high in administration must be supporting them. Ambassador Naren's expression hardened. Then we must accelerate our plans. Dr. Zell, is my daughter stable enough to move to the secure inner facility? The doctor nodded reluctantly. Yes, but we should not delay the delivery much longer. Proceed, the ambassador ordered. They transferred Nyla to a smaller, more secure operating theater deep within the facility. Max never left her side, whispering encouragement as her contractions intensified. The room was equipped with advanced medical technology, some of which Max couldn't begin to identify. Max, Nyla gasped between contractions. If something happens. Nothing's going to happen, he insisted, squeezing her hand. You're going to be fine. The baby's going to be fine. Listen to me, she persisted. If you have to choose. I'm not choosing, Max said firmly. You're both coming through this. Dr. Zell approached, having completed his preparations. The child is descending rapidly. Nilarian delivery is typically less traumatic than human birth, but the hybrid nature introduces unknowns. We're monitoring both carefully. The distant sound of weapons fire penetrated even the secure operating theater. Ambassador Naren exchanged glances with the security personnel stationed at the doors. They're getting closer, he observed grimly. Then let's not waste time, Dr. Zell replied, turning his attention fully to Nyla. It's time to push. What followed was the most intense 30 minutes of Max's life. Nyla's strength and determination amazed him as she worked through the delivery process. Dr. Zell and his team maintained professional calm despite the sounds of conflict growing steadily closer. And then, suddenly, a new sound filled the room. The cry of a newborn, strong and indignant at being thrust into the world. Max stared in wonder as Dr. Zell lifted the child. A perfect tiny being with skin a pale mint green and a wisp of silver-white hair that already showed hints of Max's brown at the temples. A boy, Dr. Zell announced, quickly checking the infant's vital signs. Breathing normally, heartbeat strong, primary and secondary cardiopulmonary systems both functioning well. Secondary? Max asked, bewildered. Nilarian evolutionary adaptation. Dr. Zell explained briefly. He has aspects of both physiologies perfectly integrated. Remarkable. The child was cleaned and wrapped in a soft blanket before being placed in Nyla's waiting arms. Max watched, overwhelmed, as she cradled their son with a look of exhausted wonder. Hello, little one, she whispered. Welcome to a very complicated world. Ambassador Naren approached cautiously, his diplomatic reserve completely abandoned as he gazed at his grandson. He is perfect, he said softly. A new beginning. The moment of peace was shattered as the facility shook with a nearby explosion. The security officer's communication device chirped urgently. They've breached the inner perimeter, Ambassador, he reported. 3 minutes, perhaps less. Dr. Clark stepped forward. We need to move them. The mother is stable. The child is breathing well. We have a transport standing by at the emergency exit. Ambassador Naren nodded decisively. Prepare them for transport. He turned to Max. Captain Thornton, I had hoped for more time, but circumstances force our hand. You must take Nyla and my grandson to the coalition outpost. I will remain to handle the diplomatic aftermath. They'll arrest you. Nyla protested weakly from the medical bed. Perhaps, her father acknowledged, but not without significant political cost. I still hold enough influence to protect myself, if not to openly defy the Trev family. He touched his grandson's cheek gently. Some things are worth the risk. The medical team worked quickly to prepare Nyla and the baby for transport. Max gathered their few belongings, his mind racing with contingency plans, escape routes, and the surreal realization that he was now responsible for a family, his family. As they prepared to move to the emergency exit, the doors to the operating theater burst open. Jarn Trev stood in the entrance, flanked by armed guards, his expression a mask of cold fury. This ends now, he declared, weapon raised. The woman and child are coming with me. Max moved protectively in front of Nyla and their son, but Ambassador Naren stepped forward to face Trev directly. You overstep your authority, the ambassador stated coldly. This is a medical facility under diplomatic protection. Your presence here violates at least 7 galactic community statutes. Statutes that pale in comparison to your betrayal, Trev shot back. The agreement between our families was binding. The woman was promised to me. My daughter is not property to be promised, Ambassador Naren replied, his voice carrying the full weight of his diplomatic authority. And circumstances have changed in ways none of us anticipated. Trev's gaze shifted to the child in Nyla's arms, and disgust twisted his features. That abomination changes nothing except the urgency of containment. The genetic contamination must be controlled. Something dangerous flashed in the ambassador's eyes. Choose your next words with extreme care. Counselor's son. That abomination is my grandson and a citizen of Nyla under my protection. The standoff stretched between them, tension crackling in the air. Behind Trev, more security forces were visible in the corridor, weapons ready. Max glanced around, assessing their options. The medical team stood frozen, Dr. Zell and Dr. Clark positioned protectively near Nyla. The emergency exit was just meters away, but reaching it meant crossing the line of fire. Then, unexpectedly, new voices erupted from the corridor behind Trev's forces. Commands were shouted, the distinctive sound of galactic security credentials being presented. Confusion spread through Trev's ranks as they found themselves suddenly confronted from behind. A tall, distinguished human in the formal uniform of the Galactic Diplomatic Corps pushed through the confusion, flanked by official security personnel. Ambassador Naren, the newcomer announced formally. I am Director Harlow of the Diplomatic Corps. We received your emergency signal invoking Section 7 Alpha of the Galactic Charter, protection of a genetically unique individual under threat of harm. Trev turned in fury. This is an Ilarian internal matter. The Diplomatic Corps has no jurisdiction. On the contrary, Director Harlow replied calmly. The birth of the first confirmed human Ilarian child makes this a matter of galactic significance. Section 7 Alpha was specifically designed for unprecedented biological events that transcend single-species jurisdiction. He glanced at the child in Nyla's arms. That child represents a diplomatic situation unto himself. The balance of power in the room had shifted palpably. Trev's forces, now caught between Diplomatic Corps security and the ambassador's personnel, began to lower their weapons. This isn't over, Trev hissed, but his defeat was evident in his posture. My father will not accept this insult. Your father, Ambassador Naren replied evenly, will understand the political realities far better than you. The Diplomatic Corps' involvement changes everything. There are now bigger considerations than your wounded pride. Director Harlow stepped forward. The mother and child will be placed under Diplomatic Corps protection and transported to a secure medical facility for observation and care. This is non-negotiable. And the human? Trev demanded, glaring at Max. Captain Thornton will accompany them, of course, Harlow stated as if it were obvious. As the father, his rights are also protected under the Charter. Max could hardly believe the sudden reversal of their fortunes. Minutes ago, they had been on the verge of a desperate escape. Now they were under the official protection of the highest diplomatic authority in the galactic community. Nyla reached for his hand, relief evident in her exhausted features. The baby stirred in her arms, making a soft sound that was neither entirely human nor entirely Nylarian. 3 days later, Max stood at the viewport of the Diplomatic Corps medical ship Harmony, watching the stars streak by as they traveled at sublight speed toward the secure facility in the Rigel system. Behind him, Nyla slept peacefully in the comfortable recovery room they'd been assigned, their son, now officially named Thane Max Thornton Arendath, sleeping in a bassinet beside her. The door slid open quietly to admit Ambassador Naren. The older Nylarian looked tired but satisfied, the events of the past days having taken a toll, while simultaneously vindicating his decisions. Captain Thornton, he greeted Max formally, before his tone softened. Or perhaps I should simply call you Max, given that we are now family. Max is fine, he agreed, still somewhat uncomfortable with the ambassador's presence. I didn't expect you to accompany us all the way to Rigel. There is much diplomatic work to be done, the ambassador explained, moving to stand beside Max at the viewport. The implications of Thane's birth extend far beyond our personal circumstances. The Trev family? Max asked cautiously. Counselor Trev has officially withdrawn his son's claim, Ambassador Naren said with a hint of satisfaction. Once the Diplomatic Corps became involved, he recognized the political liability of opposing progress. He's now positioning himself as a progressive advocate for interspecies cooperation. Max shook his head in disbelief. Politics. Indeed, the ambassador agreed. But in this case, politics works in our favor. Your son, my grandson, is now seen as a symbol of new possibilities between humans and Nilarians. What began as a scandal is transforming into a diplomatic opportunity. And what does that mean for us? Max gestured toward the sleeping Nyla and Thane. For my family? The word felt strange on his tongue, family. Just weeks ago, he had been a solitary cargo hauler, drifting between contracts and casual encounters. Now, he was a father connected irrevocably to Nilarian high society and galactic diplomacy. It means, Ambassador Naren said thoughtfully, that your lives will never be entirely private. Thane represents something larger than himself. Hope, possibility, the future of interspecies relations. But, he added, noting Max's expression, it also means you will have resources and protection that few others enjoy. I never wanted to be a diplomat, Max admitted. Few do. Initially, the ambassador replied with unexpected humor. But you may find you have an aptitude for it. Your actions during this crisis revealed a certain diplomatic talent. I was just trying to protect Nyla and the baby. Precisely. The best diplomacy is often born from genuine conviction. The ambassador turned from the viewport to face Max directly. I have a proposal for you, one that Director Harlow supports. The Diplomatic Corps is establishing a new division focused on interspecies relations and biological compatibility. They require representatives who understand the practical realities, not just the theoretical principles. Max raised an eyebrow. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you and Nyla positions as special envoys, the ambassador clarified. Working with both human and Nilarian diplomatic services, but under galactic community authority. You would be based primarily on the diplomatic vessel Harmony once the initial observation period at Rigel is complete. A ship named Harmony. Max mused, the irony not lost on him. It's a lot to consider. Of course, Ambassador Naren agreed. Discuss it with Nyla when she wakes. But know that whatever you decide, you have my support. He hesitated, then added more personally. When I arranged Nyla's match with the Trev family, I believed I was securing her future and serving our people's interests. I was wrong. Sometimes the greatest diplomatic breakthroughs come not from careful planning, but from unexpected connections. Before Max could respond, a soft cry came from the bassinet. Both men turned to see little Thane awakening, his tiny fists waving in the air. His skin seemed to shimmer slightly in the starlight from the viewport, a uniquely beautiful combination of his mixed heritage. He has your eyes, the ambassador observed as Max moved to carefully lift his son. And Nyla's spirit, I suspect. Max cradled Thane, still marveling at how natural it felt despite his earlier certainty that parenthood was not for him. The baby settled against his chest, making a soft sound that, to Max's now trained ear, included the gentlest hint of that once terrifying slurp, a sound that now filled him with affection rather than fear. We come a long way from me running naked down a corridor, Max remarked wryly. The ambassador's expression suggested he was choosing not to dwell on that particular mental image. Growth often begins with unexpected moments of truth, he said diplomatically. Nyla stirred on the bed, her eyes opening to find Max holding their son while her father looked on. The scene, so impossible to imagine just weeks ago, brought a smile to her face. The three most important men in my life, she observed sleepily. Planning the future of galactic diplomacy without me? Never, Max assured her, bringing Thane to her waiting arms. Just admiring what we've created together, something entirely new in the galaxy. As Nyla took their son, her fingers brushed Max's in a gesture that conveyed everything they hadn't yet put into words. Behind them, the stars continued to stream past the viewport as the Harmony carried them toward a future neither had imagined, but both now embraced. In the quiet of the medical ship's cabin, with Ambassador Naren discreetly stepping back to give them privacy, Max and Nyla looked down at their son. Physical proof that the universe held more possibilities than either humans or Nihilarians had dreamed possible. And somewhere in the back of Max's mind, he couldn't help but think that running from that first startling slurp had somehow, ironically, been the best decision of his life, because it had led him right back to where he truly belonged.